Okay, depending on whether or not you like this movie, you're either gonna think I'm crazy or genius. And if you think I'm crazy, then this just may not be, the video for you. You might just want to like turn it off. But if you think I'm genius, right after I tell you what I did, then you're gonna thoroughly enjoy this. Okay, so check me out. 1 second. I gotta get my journal. I started recording. 1 second. So I watched Pulp Fiction. And I didn't do it for the entire film because I had to leave yesterday, but I pretty much wrote down the first and last line of every single scene. And I would have done the whole movie, but again, I feel like what I did do will suffice. All right. So let me try to justify doing this. We all love this film. Okay? We know it's great. And we know that it's madness, and we also love it for that exact same reason. So, I just wanted to kind of highlight and identify some of the method in this madness and just comment on how I feel and what I've observed and just, all that. Okay, so very, very first scene, right? The film comes on, and the first thing that the audience hears is, forget it, it's too risky. Okay? And then this conversation is pretty much about them robbing the coffee shop that they're in right now. My absolute favorite thing about this scene is the part where Honey Bunny lays her head on the table and she says, I'm not gonna kill anybody. I thought that was so innocent. It was so innocent for just the nature of the conversation and what they were talking about. And I just like that it also made our characters much more interesting to look at and observe. And the very last line, Honey Bunny says, she says, any of you fucking pricks move and I'll execute every motherfucking last one of you. And then the title comes. And even the title, I feel like just before we even get to the title, what a lot of films don't do is make the first 5 minutes of the movie interesting. The films that start with the title in the beginning, I appreciate and I get and I respect that because maybe that's traditional, maybe that makes sense. But what I appreciate about Pulp Fiction is that before we even get to the titles, there's something that convinces me to stay. Okay, and then after the titles, the first thing that we hear is, okay, so tell me again about the hash bars. And then what I love about these two is, one, the fact that the conversation is so intimate and personal. The frames, the shots are intimate and personal, and it feels like we're in the car with them. And I like that we get that we are able to see both characters on the screen individually, and we don't just get them in a car, and And then the last thing is Vincent says, I see him do it, man. They fucking drown him in that shit. And they talk about the mayonnaise and the french fries. And the next scene, Jill says, we should have shotguns for this kind of deal. And then Vincent literally ends with, we should have fucking shotguns. And he starts explaining the concept of a pilot, right? So we're getting these conversations that are actually very, very, very informative. And the information is a little bit like the nature of the conversation that they're having is obscure, but the details that are given and the content is actually like useful information to know what a pilot is. You know what I mean? So he says, what's her name? And the last thing Jules says is she starred in one of the ones that became nothing. And then this part, you remember Antoine Rockamora. And then the last thing he says is word around the campfire is it was on account of Marcellus Wallace's wife. So we're getting a lot of the plot. This is where the plot starts like warming up and heating up, and it starts to get spicy here. Vincent literally says, so what do you do? Fuck her. And that's the first thing that comes, the first thing that we hear. Every time there is a transition or a cut from one setting to the next, these lines are like the first thing that we hear. And I think it's just constant stimulation, a continuous piquing curiosity. And then the last thing Vincent says is that's a damn shame. You know what? I'm going to skip some of these, even though I definitely think all of them are important. And I think for me, just as a writer, and being a filmmaker, I think it's so important to dissect and like completely devour the films that you love the most, because I think that helps you understand your own personal writing style. But I want to talk about when they get to Jackrabbit Slim. I think that's what it's called. And there are some scenes where the first thing that we hear isn't a line, it's a noise. But it's my favorite is when Mia leaves the table and she's like, I'm gonna go powder my nose, and you find something, you know, like interesting to talk about, whatever. That's not the exact line, I don't think, but either way, she goes into the freaking bathroom with a slow-mo shot. First of all, something that I want to point out is a freaking like epiphany that I had about the like Mia and how this character is dark in the same way that Wednesday Addams is dark. And I'm not comparing the two characters, like that's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying like there's something distinct about the personality of Wednesday Addams, and I feel like that same distinction is there with the character Mia, how she's really dark and Uma Thurman is just like beautiful to look at, and there's this mixture of experiences going on, and then it cuts to, and all you hear is I say goddamn. She says goddamn, and smiles and leaves the bathroom. And then they have that whole conversation about how Vincent thought it was reasonable for Marcellus to throw that man out the freaking window for touching his wife's feet. And I love that at the end of all of what Mia and Vincent go through, he blows her freaking kiss. But before that, let me go back to the freaking OD, right? That scene is edited to freaking perfection. And it's just like a standard that I feel like is there. And I want to point it out because I think that Pulp Fiction helps me maintain a certain level of like respect for film because it allows me to just not just settle for anything when it comes to a work of art and how much effort people are willing to put into making a movie make sense. And that in the scene where they're trying to give her the adrenaline shot, and for me, it's not just the placement of the subject in the foreground, it's what's in the background. And that even the facial expressions between the like takes and the shots that are edited together are parallel and in alignment. And can I tell you how many films that I've watched where people don't care about that aspect of filmmaking, making sure that all of the scenes transition and flow. I mean, like the freaking takes when they're edited together, that it makes sense. I wanted to say the F word, but I'm not going to, because honestly I don't curse in just regular conversation, but how passionate it gets me, oh my. Okay. But if you just sit and you watch the scene where they're trying to give her the adrenaline shot, every detail is perfect and thorough. And oh my goodness. Vincent crashes into the house and the first thing he says is, like the guy, he freaking yells, where is it? I wrote it down, but he says, have you lost your fucking mind? And then they like literally have her on the freaking grass. And Vincent is just so worried about not getting caught up by Marcellus. Okay, I really think that that's all I want to say. You know, I don't want this to just be like a regular, oh, Pulp Fiction is this and that and la 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 la. I want it to be a little bit more entertaining. So that's it.